ESPN dropped a really cool article debating the number one overall player at every single position for the 2026 NFL draft. So I'm here to give my thoughts on it. Let's jump right into this. If you guys are new, feel free to like, comment, subscribe. Below my face is my board, and it is based on players who are already put up on the show outside of Malachi Lawrence, which we'll be doing a video on him on his own in a little bit in the future. So I'm excited for that. But, if you guys are wondering, where are the tackles? Those are about to be coming up. I'm about to go on a big trip, but I'm actually finishing up everything, and we're going to try our best to get it recorded before that. But if not, I'm going to do my best to maybe even get some things going for you guys while I'm abroad. But let's get into this. Starting about the quarterback position, there's Cade Klubnik versus Garrett Nussmeier. They're talking essentially about how Arch Manning is probably not going to leave Texas. So I assume that that's why they're not talking about it. You guys know my thoughts because I do not have Cade Klubnik or Garrett Nussmeier listed as the top guy for me. You guys see who that is. I'm a big believer in Lenore Sellers. I am a big believer in Arch Manning, even though he's probably not coming out in this class. I'm a big believer in Fernando Mendoza. Like, those two are the top guys for me, but Cade Klubnik is pretty damn close behind. It's a pretty tight group, 4 and 5, upwards of 3, because think about Arch Manning at 2. So, Cade Klubnik, I do think absolutely belongs in the top group. Garrett Nussmeier needs a lot of progression more than what people are trying to say he needs. And I would say also Garrett Nussmeier has a very scary frame. I'm going to try to cut that a little bit shorter because I kind of rant about it every single time, but he's 6'2", 200 pounds listed by LSU. That is something where if it wasn't Garrett Nussmeier, everybody would be talking about that as a negative. Don't know why they're not doing it about Garrett, but it is what it is. Both do not have elite arms. They have good arms. Both have not elite throws, or excuse me, take that back. Both do not have elite processors, but Cade Klubnik has a high-end processor. Garrett Nussmeier has the elite throws. That's where I was trying to go with that. But I would just say Cade Klubnik is a lot safer of a bet. Garrett Nussmeier definitely has some issues. Of course, I like that they're talking about Fernando Mendoza and Lenore Sellers right there because those are my guys who are at the top. Understandable, though, because it just seems like there's a lot of people who love Garrett Nussmeier more than me, and I've regraded him like 4 times, and especially because I was thinking about him coming out last year. Running back position, Jeremiah Love, Nick Singleton is the battle at number 1, and you guys see I have actually a group of 3 at that number 1 spot, essentially with Damon Claiborne, Jaheim White, and Jeremiah Love. Jeremiah Love you do not get to see, but he is 1 spot below where your revision is. Jeremiah Love is awesome. I'd try to downgrade running back value without taking out that running back value. You would end up seeing them in my top 10. I think this class is absolutely studded in terms of sleeper talent. And Jeremiah Love, at least, he is not overrated in any way, shape, or form. He is a really damn good back. I fell in love with Jaheim White and Damon Claiborne, which, funnily enough, I do know that I know this is Matt Miller's article, and they had some debates in here from some other ESPN analysts as well. But one of those being Jordan Reed. Jordan Reed also has Damon Claiborne in his top 5. And I ended up making a video about all of their top 5s, their positional rankings for every position. So feel free to check that out as well. But, Damon Claiborne's an absolute savage. Then you look at Jaheim White. No one's talking about him, but the people, it feels like when I was talking about Braden Swinson, which, to be fair, he ended up falling in the draft for off-the-field concerns, not on-the-field concerns. So it makes me feel a little more validated for his fall in the draft. But everybody I knew ended up just starting, because this guy was a nobody, and all of a sudden he just started taking a meteoric rise, which also friend of the show. So shout out to Braden there. But Jaheim White, when people say they watch him, they just get enamored. And I think that's exactly how I feel. I think Jaheim White will end up being one of those guys that just continues to take those small steps. And with losing CJ Donaldson to Ohio State, it's now more than ever a time for Jaheim White to ball the fuck out. And I got to see Jaheim White in person at the Frisco Bowl, which I didn't even he wasn't on my radar at the time. And I just fell in love every time I saw him touch the ball. And it broke my heart when I saw him get hurt at the end of the half. And I think he ended up coming back, which was great. But regardless, Jeremiah Love, to sum it up, really good talent. I think he needs to be a little bit more consistent when it comes to breaking tackles, but he has that I'm not going to say this is remotely a comp, but talking about the chain broken tackles, the way that Marshawn Lynch can have chain broken tackles. This guy has tremendous drive. I just want to see it more consistently, but he's an elite athlete in every way, shape, or form. I think he's going to be a superstar as he continues to polish up. I do not think that Jeremiah Love will not be my number one running back at the end of the year. I just think right now that polishing needs to be had, and it's okay. I mean, I think he is on a really, really, really good trajectory. Nick Singleton, I'm a little bit more worried about. And this is someone who I've really tried every single time to fall in love with. I'm a sucker for Penn State. Everybody who watches my show knows that I'm an Ohio State fan, but I fell in love with Penn State so much. And you can blame Joey Porter Jr. for being the primary reason why I fell in love with it. But I mean, of all colleges, I have one that I wear their polo now, and it is a Penn State polo. So I will just say, shout out to my ex-girlfriend for actually getting me that as a birthday gift. So thank you for that. But regardless, I mean, I love it. I mean, I love Penn State and everything that they stand for. So when I ended up not liking Singleton, it really did bother me because he's fun to watch and he's a very good college back. I don't think he translates as well, but it is very system dependent. He is north-south. He is built like a motherfucker. He is built like a brick shit house, and he can also run in a straight line, unlike pretty much most guys in the country. So I understand why people fall in love with him. I think the running back position is a lot more than just that, and that's why he doesn't grade necessarily well for me. I don't think he's necessarily the best blocker. You guys can check the video out as to where I have my opinions on Nick Singleton. And to be fair, when you grade every single player in the country, I do find it really disingenuous when I see people having very, very similar rankings to the top of the class or to everybody else, because I hate to say it, we all watch the same thing. We all come away with different opinions. And that's the beauty of this. That's why, I mean, I try my best to be as honest as possible. Do I think that Jaheim White will end up being the number one running back? No. But it's the number one running back to me. And I don't think that that's a bad thing. I don't think that it's worth, curving what my honest opinion is to make other people feel like, my opinion lines up with someone else. I'd rather be wrong and honest and end up learning from my mistake or my success. So all that to say, Nick Singleton, I just think is a little bit too one-dimensional. And I'm hoping that he ends up continuing to evolve and be an awesome player for a team that I really do root for. So let's continue on, though. Wide receivers, Mekhi Lemon, Jordan Tyson. Those are my wide receivers 1 and 2. So I totally agree. Which is really nice. It's good to see that. Yeah, Mekhi was somebody I didn't even know that he was considered this high up. He just caught my eye, and I was like, holy Toledo. Mekhi is a little bit more role specific than I think people will like to give him credit for. But, I mean, he's probably going to be playing a little bit more outside here and there. I love the flexibility that he has. I don't really see him being an extreme vertical threat, but I do think his route running, especially when it comes to those hard stops, like when you're talking about comeback routes, there's not many people in the country, if anyone, that can remotely come close. And it's really awesome. This guy can drop his hips and change directions on a dime. It's going to be very valuable in the NFL. Jordan Tyson is just an absolute savage. I mean, apparently people think he has more speed than even I gave him credit for. You see where he's at. He's at number 4 on my board. Granted, I do worry about the medical history. I think that could be something that would end up shifting my opinion a little bit to where maybe Mekhi Lemon could overtake Jordan Tyson. But I don't like to look primarily at injury history when we're doing summer scouting. I think that, you get to see an entire season. Guys have some injury history that ends up being cleared up. And, maybe it was just a nagging injury that ended up being healed. So I don't really want to weigh my opinion super heavily on that. I think that Jordan Tyson in the games that I saw showed unbelievable polish in a way that made me extremely confident, even though I have the opinion that he's not as fast as maybe some others do. And if he is faster, that makes it even better. So, I mean, Jordan Tyson's an absolute beast. I think he plays a lot larger than 195 as well, but he plays with the finesse of someone who might be 185, and I love that for him. Mekhi Lemon, again, he is a very, very good receiver. This is one that I completely agree with. Some other names they mentioned, Isaiah Horton, going from Miami to Alabama. He flashes. He does. He also seems really lazy from time to time. I'll call it out as it is. You guys can watch the receiver video. I ended up talking about the fact that I thought he takes some reps off. Antonio Williams is a beast. I want to get that drop rate down. Eric Singleton, you got to watch out for the weight, but the dude's dynamic as hell. Denzel Boston is just not really my type of receiver. It's just I'm not a big guy for, big X vertical guys. I think he's just a worse Tetro McMillan, but that's still a very good receiver to have. I'm just talking about in terms of what people believe. Elijah Surratt is a contested catch specialist. He's really, really technical, but just not a good athlete. A name I would like to toss in there is Noah Thomas. He transferred from Texas A&M to Georgia. Just gonna be honest, don't know why these guys are transferring to Georgia. I don't think the quarterback play remotely matches up to the type of production that these guys could get with a quarterback that is higher end. Just going to leave that there. But, Noah Thomas is a really, really good receiver. And Chase Roberts as well. He's a little bit on the older side, same high school class as me. But, he is somebody that is just ridiculous hands wise, and he's somebody who can absolutely take the top off of defense based on the fact that he blends both route running nuance with some vertical ability, and that contested catch rate is awesome. So also, I didn't even see. So Tyson's the early top pick. Let's see. Jordan Love's the early top pick, and Klubnik. Okay, you know what? Those are all safe bets. Tight ends, we got Stowers and Sadiq. Eli Stowers, Kenyon Sadiq, for those of y'all who are not necessarily looking and more so on the listening side. But, Eli, again, I have a tight end video out. You guys can end up watching my in-depth opinions on these guys. Kenyon Sadiq, you see where he's at. And, he is number 9 on my board for a reason. I've debated boosting tight end value as well to where he could end up being my number 7 player in the class. I'm debating on how much that's the case because if you guys are not new, I like to continue tweaking my grading scale as much as I can because if I see area for improvement, that means that I'm more honest with you guys and I feel better about the system that I've created. So I used to end up putting a 2 score boost for tight ends that are starting grade tight ends because it's just very hard to find legitimately talented, like quality starting tight ends. And I think those guys really matter. But I will say the way that it ended up playing out, I do feel like Kenyon Sadiq is my 9th best player. So I feel really comfortable with that. And then the way with Miles Kitselman sitting there at 23 for me. And I mean, that's a guy who I'm extremely high on. I just think that it's in a good spot. So that being said, Kenyon Sadiq, number 9 on my board. I think he is the most dynamic tight end I've ever studied outside of Brock Bowers. I would say I didn't have all 22 and I will say I didn't hold myself to the same standards I've done over the past 2 years. And that was the moment I got into beyond caddies cut up. So shout out to caddies. It's a great way to start out. So a lot of you guys asked me how to get into all 22, which is coaching tape. Like that's a great way to start, but there's a source that I can't say, which is why I don't end up talking about it. Otherwise I'd be like, who wants to gatekeep information? I just know that there's a lot of regulation that happens and a lot of things that could end up causing these very large entities to be taken down. It's unfortunate. Follow Brett Coleman. You could see the fact that whenever they post tape at all, like these guys are coming at them like hawks, which legality, we'll talk about that maybe another time. But, regardless, all that being said, when I ended up getting this new source, it changed the game for me. We're talking about being able to look at different angles rather than just watching so Caddies has it in like a video format. This is like angle by play. So you get to like click through the angles and it's so good. If you guys follow me over on Twitter, you get to see exactly what I mean. And so it just changed the game. So for Kyle Pitts, I got to watch him and I really loved him, but I didn't get to have that the apples to apples comparison in the way that you can with all 22 tape, because when you're watching, what they're putting on TV, they're not showing the whole play. They're not showing the same angle. Sometimes they're really zoomed in on the offensive line. So I don't necessarily have like Kenyon Sadiq is better than Kyle Pitts, which I loved Kyle Pitts to death. I can't say that, but for the tight ends that I've graded outside of Brock Bowers, and I don't even think Brock Bowers is as talented after the catch as Kenyon Sadiq, and Brock Bowers is like creme de la creme. Kenyon Sadiq is like the most mind-boggling athlete I've ever seen at tight end for his build. And like he is legitimately a running back, a wide receiver, and a tight end mixed together. If you just divide it by 3 and just push them together, that's what you get with Kenyon Sadiq. Eli Stowers is a little bit different. He's really fun. And here's the problem. He's 6'4". I thought he was 235, but even more to my point, if it says 225. Stowers is older. He's undersized. He's really explosive, and he's very fun to watch. And he's going to be a great tight end in college. It's just very, very role specific. And very similarly to what we're seeing with Nussmeier, this it's just a weird misapplication or lack of application of criticism that we'll put on other players for Stowers. That I don't get, but I do want to shout out Miles Kitzelman. He's someone who I am a huge fan of. Eli Raridan's the guy who I think is the dark horse of the class. Every time I see this guy, because I've watched edges go up against Notre Dame, I've watched obviously corners, wide receivers, or not the wide receivers, but because I mean, who the fuck's why is a wide receiver playing a tight end? But I've looked at defensive interiors. I've done so much watching of Notre Dame in pretty much every single game. The guy who consistently stands out, regardless of whether I'm watching for him, in a way that doesn't reflect his actual production, is Eli Raridan. I think he's going to be an absolute superstar. It's going to break my heart when Notre Dame doesn't use him the way he should. But I mean, he ended up having a good usage just primarily as a blocker. I'm hoping he gets utilized more. And I think that if he is a primary focus of the offense as the number one tight end, we could see him going in the first round. So that's the name I'll toss in there over Miles Kitzelman, because Kitzelman, he is just in a bad system. He's older as well. But I'm not a guy who's saying just like Harold Fannin Jr. for Stowers. I loved Harold Fannin Jr. Like he was I was a big Fannin guy. Not in the same realm. Just gotta be honest. But regardless, their top pick is Stowers. My top pick is by far Kenyon Sadiq. Let's talk about offensive tackles here. We got Spencer Fano, Caden Proctor, Francis Mauigoa. And I have 40 graded, if I'm not mistaken. I might be at 35. We're close. But I will say Spencer Fano is the real deal. Caden Proctor's scary as shit. Francis Mauigoa is a guard. That's just a super quick, simple way. Obviously, I'll explain. Spencer Fano is gritty. He is unbelievably polished, but at the same time, very powerful. His hands land with insane pop. He has good length. Like, he is nearly an ideal tackle. So I think this guy will end up going in the top 10. Caden Proctor, on the other hand, he needs to lose some weight. He doesn't have the power in his hands that you think for somebody. I'm losing my voice if you can't tell. I put one of those like whitening trays in my mouth, the ones where you put the damn light on, and it is like, it's taken something from me. But hopefully it ends up giving me whiter teeth. Y'all know the deal. But Caden Proctor is 360. Monster. 6'7". Probably going to have a 35-inch wings, like 35-inch arms. Like, this guy is built to the 9. He just doesn't have power to him. And I'm like, how? Like, how the fuck? You have pretty solid looking arms. You're relatively mobile for your size. Why? And it's unfortunate, but Proctor has a lot of room to grow. Alabama tackles have bit me in the ass before that I like for their build. JC Latham, I had a lot more faith in than Caden Proctor. So I will just say I'm not using the scout the helmet thing, but Caden Proctor, really scary. When I see an underdeveloped Bama tackle, I think he needs 2 years. So fingers crossed he ends up expediting that, but Caden Proctor's scary. Francis is a good player. Very good player. I would say his arm length is petrifying. I think he might be 32, if not sub. And his movement skills are great. His facial awareness is a little bit concerning. But I will say Francis Mauigoa, the way he plays, the issues he has just translates so much better to the NFL at guard. And I know a lot of people who believe that as well, one of them being Jordan Reed. So another name I'll toss in there, which I have official measurements for, is Caleb Tiernan out of Northwestern. He has 32.5-inch arms. That's a big issue. He's 6'7.5" as well. These are official numbers, 320 pounds. The guy plays with the highest level of technicality, and he's strong. He can handle power, finesse. Like, I think he probably is up there with the best tackles I've studied. And he doesn't have great arm length, but we just saw somebody who's now the number one tackle in terms of pay, their salary, with not ideal arm length from that same school. Not going to give that as a comp because, again, I want to be able to be honest with my opinions, and all 22, I want to give you guys an actual apples to apples. And I've grown a lot as a evaluator as well, learning from my mistakes and successes. But not saying I missed on Slater. I like Slater, but I will say I don't have enough information to make that straight comp, but I do love the parallels. So I'm gonna say my number one tackle. Spoiler alert, drum roll. It's up there. It's a tie. It's not actually a tie. Technically, it's Tiernan, but I will say Fano is a monster. Um, he is not. I will just say this: Proctor's not the strongest of the group. Not remotely close. I don't give a shit how much you can squat or bench press. I'm just gonna be honest. It doesn't show up on tape. I hate to break it to y'all. Like I really want to, but yeah. I mean, I do not like the name like Membu being thrown around. Not many of these guys. I mean, if there's gonna be a name that's similar to Armand Membu, it's actually someone who's older than Armand Membu. It's Alex Harkey, who's an Oregon right tackle now, transferred from Texas State. Like the mobility and the tenacity, I would say that's going to be a little bit more up his alley. But talking about Xavier Chaplin, Drew Shelton, Isaiah World as well. Chaplin is pretty much to me only a top end pass blocker. I would say he's very, very one dimensional in that aspect. And he's grown a lot since he was at VT, but long arms and a really good pass blocker. I do think that when things don't perfectly go his way, shit hits the fan. But still a very solid tackle. And then Drew Shelton is a very, very fun player to watch. He is a guard. I don't think he has very good arm length. He is a very tenacious guy. Like he will pop off as someone who will be fighting the whole play. And he has those shutdown reps, absolutely. But I do think that Drew Shelton, the left tackle, needs to have his issues pertain to the outside. So I do think he'll end up being a really solid guard. Isaiah World's all that. I mean, he's listed at 6'8", and he's kind of the exact opposite of some of these other guys. He's actually apparently 6'5" to 6'6", but that makes me like him more because he's in that 310 range. And Isaiah World, as long as he stops having penalties, which when you are a talented tackle and you're playing with Nevada, I will say discipline is probably not as much there. Same thing with technique. So I think that Oregon's going to be a great place for him to grow. So, I mean, Proctor being the top pick, massive, massive stretch in my opinion, but it's possible. I mean, if he hits, he hits. Like there's not many guys who can remotely compete with someone who's 6'7", 360 with probably 35-inch arms. Interior offensive lineman, this is not a position I have graded, so I will yap a lot less. Caden Green, Jake Slaughter. Jake Slaughter I do have a grade on because I thought he was coming out last year. Caden Green I've watched a lot of, do not have an official grade on him. I've just watched a lot of defensive interiors versus Caden Green. I think he's a very good player. I will say, again, I have not watched him exclusively. I do not like making my opinions off of just watching somebody else and seeing how they perform versus said person. I prefer to watch how Caden Green performs versus somebody, not somebody versus Caden Green, if that makes sense. Because it's just, I take things very, very particularly. I like to be able to sit down and maybe overanalyze a player to a degree. But yeah, I'm gonna say that Caden Green so far through my experiences has been a positive one. I don't know if he's going to be the top dog because, again, I'm tossing in Maui Goa into that guard role. And then Jake Slaughter as well. Jake Slaughter was one of my favorite centers from the last class. I think he was my center one before he ended up returning to school. I thought that was a bad decision by Jake. Like, just a very thin center class. There's just no reason for him to return, in my opinion. And I think he could have ended up going a lot earlier than what maybe he thought he was going to go. Just a very solid center. Not necessarily great in any category, but just a really high floor player, which is kind of what you want. But I don't really like comparing guards and centers. I think their roles are different. So my current pick for interior offensive lineman, even if I'm going to bunch them together, would end up being Maui Goa at guard. Defensive tackles, we got Peter Woods and Caleb Banks. We have a little bit of a graphical issue here. ESPN, get your stuff together. It's all love. It's all love. Peter Woods, this is supposed to be a Clemson logo. If I end up criticizing them, I deserve a lot of flack because I always make a graphical mistake myself. It happens. Peter Woods, you guys see exactly who my top two defensive interiors are, and it is a pretty big jump to the next tier, which, I mean, I still really, really like guys like Lee Hunter. So I'm not going to throw shade, but Peter Woods is a beast. Caleb Banks has 35-inch arms. He's going to be a really intriguing prospect. I think he's too raw for how talented he is and how much experience he has. I do think that there's a legitimate issue there. Peter Woods is young, but he's just like, I wish he were more of a specific task expert. Like, he's just not, because they utilize him everywhere, to where I haven't seen him get enough time to be comfortable consistently at one spot perfecting his craft. When you're consistently working on your timing, your angles, and all your moves as an edge rusher, a four eye, even at nose, like it just, you can't build up consistency enough. And it's not like, oh, he plays a couple reps on the outside. This guy is literally moved everywhere like a super weapon. And that's great to have. But if we're talking about projection to the NFL, how often are NFL teams going to do that when you have those specific experts at those positions? And it's good to have that ability, but I really do think Peter Woods could end up taking the jump to be the number one player in the class if he had more consistency at certain positions. But Peter Woods has those reps where you're just like, oh my God. And same thing with that next guy, Christian Miller. I'm surprised that Christian Miller's not mentioned in this. That actually breaks my heart a little bit. Like, damn. But yeah, I mean, Banks is just somebody. They're literally saying waiting to break out. And to me, honestly, my opinion on this list so far is a lot of speculation. Which is, I mean, we are a year away from what is supposed to happen. I understand that, but I do think it's semi disingenuous to, like, projections fun, but I also think it is kind of pulling stuff out of our ass, right? I mean, like, we don't know. We could say, oh, I mean, like, for me, talking about someone who I just talked about earlier, Alex Harkey going from Texas State to Oregon, I think he's going to improve noticeably. I'm not going to say that he is my early top pick because he's older. There's other factors there, but on top of that, he's just not as talented. I do think that talent needs to matter, and talent does have production, and it's not just how raw you are. That, like, you can't just make an excuse when you're a seasoned veteran, in my opinion. With Caden Proctor, I understand because he is still very, very young. With Banks, he is a seasoned veteran, and it's just like, there are other players that are doing a damn good job at defensive interior, and to not see one of them mentioned is, to me, a little bit of a question mark. But for edge rushers, we got TJ Parker, Keldrick Falk. TJ Parker, I'm still waiting to see it with him because I think his IQ, his processing of the game, is just noticeably lower. Some other people that have watched him ended up mentioning that to me as well. So it's good to see that I'm not the only one, because everyone has TJ Parker at the top of their list. Again, I think people throw out IQ so often because last year was Jack Sawyer. Jack Sawyer got better as the season progressed, and he's now a Steeler. So shout out to my team. But it's just people, for some reason, in the industry, I don't know why, do not care about if an edge rusher knows where the ball is. I have no freaking clue why that's the case. Now, I think it's more important for a defensive interior to know that, because of the fact, if you have no idea where the ball is, that you kind of are in the middle of traffic. Like, it is very, very important. Versus an edge, sometimes the play will be completely away from you. I understand that there's less of an impact there, but understand what the hell is going on the field is very, very important. And I think that's my biggest issue with TJ. Like, I think that got him in more messes than anything else. And I think as long as he continues to polish up as a processor, that will make him more effective versus the run, make him more effective as a pass rusher. And, that will meteorically shoot him up. And I would love to see that. I have not, and nobody really likes to talk about that. So, I mean, again, he has, so someone said the best tools out of any of them. An AFC East area scout said he sets up blockers and finishes with a mean streak. You need power to play in the pros. So I would just say, I think that's a bit extreme. And again, I'm not saying that I'm better than an AFC East scout. I'm just saying this is my honest opinion. And AFC East scouts have gotten things wrong several times. So have I. But at the same time, that's why we can end up having these conversations. Keldrick Falk, though, really good player. He's my number 20 player on my board. Scroll down a little bit so you get to see it. A lot of flashes. He's still getting into his new body. He was listed 288 last year, now listed 270. I think it's a lot better for him if he is actually dropping to that weight, because I think he's going to be a true edge rusher. And, the plays that he ends up making are just phenomenal. And I don't know why now this seems like an outdated figure because it says 270 now. But, I mean, Falk, when he is on, and he's unstoppable. I do like the Arik Armstead conversation. I mean, I do understand that. I mean, if he is 288 now, I think that that would warrant it. That's how he played last year. But I do think if he is down 18 pounds to 270, should be getting more edge rusher comps. So, yeah, really, really good pick, or a really good choice with adding Falk into that top group. Ruben Bain is my number 2 edge rusher. David Bailey, obviously, I think he's my number 5 edge rusher, but he is like literally tied there with Okunola, Llewellyn, excuse me. And then I got Malachi Lawrence up at the top. Y'all know me. I mean, I'm a super fan of him, and I think he'll end up making a huge rise. Linebackers, Anthony Hill, CJ Allen. I have not watched linebackers, but I've seen enough, and Anthony Hill is an absolute baller. CJ Allen, I have not seen enough of yet. So I'm going to leave it here for the time being because, again, I'm not going to speak from ignorance, but I will say that, I've watched a lot of Texas, not as much Georgia defense, but enough to where I would say Anthony Hill stood out. So far, CJ Allen hasn't, but that is far from saying that I'm looking specifically for CJ Allen and he's not showing up. That's not the case. So I'm excited to see, though. Cornerbacks, Jermon McCoy, Avion Terrell. I'm just going to be honest. This list seems cookie cutter. There has not been very much variation at all between the consensus and the top picks. That bothers me. I mean, I'm just going to be honest. It does feel a little disingenuous because, as I say, we all watch the same players and we come away with different opinions. And this is, if I were to close my eyes before I ever even watched or read this list and I ended up talking about the top guys, I might be able to hit 80% of these. And that's a little bit scary because there needs to be some top names that haven't been discussed because every single year we think these are the top guys and new guys will rise up. So I will say a little disingenuous there in my opinion. Jermon McCoy, though, very good corner. He's my corner 9. He ended up boosting up after my corner video because the more I watched him, the more I realized I did not give him enough credit for his athleticism. I still think that there's a little bit too much not being talked about in terms of his athletic ability, but towards ACL, that makes it a lot worse. But still, good player. Avion Terrell. I think Avion Terrell is a feisty dude. He belongs in the top 2. And for me, he is. I love Mansour Delane. We'll see if he ends up being mentioned here. And no. And I kind of wish they ended up doing that a little bit more, where they ended up mentioning the honorable mentions. But yeah, I mean, McCoy, it's like saying that, the Will Johnson that we thought of at the end, where he doesn't have necessarily the athleticism, the explosiveness, is the number 1. And for me, I still held out hope. Like right now, I'm still a bit concerned with Will Johnson. It's a conversation for another day. Still think it was an amazing move because it shows decisiveness by Arizona to go after a player you believe in. But I just think the archetype of Jermon McCoy needs to be in a very particular system to work. Otherwise, you're getting somebody who could be a legitimate liability. Avion Terrell, I do think, is a little bit more scheme versatile, but I will toss in Mansour Delane into that mix. Davison Igbinosun if he cleans up his penalties as well. And then last but not least, we got a safety tier with Caleb Downs and Dylan Thieneman. Once again, these are kind of the consensus top 2. I have not dug into the safety class yet, and I do have some long-ass flights ahead of me to where I'm going to be trying to dig into the offensive line and then maybe on the way back home think about some linebackers and safeties to catch up on. But Caleb Downs is, I've said Malachi Lawrence is the one who doesn't have a video up, but so does Caleb Downs. So funnily enough, 2 and 3 are guys who are not represented in videos on the show. But Caleb Downs, I think, is arguably the best player in the country. Lenora Sellers is just someone who had my jaw literally dragging on the floor to the point where my beard started getting grinded and shaved off. Wasn't a huge fan of that, so I had to pick it up and just admit that Lenora Sellers is going to be my Superman for the year. But Caleb Downs, I mean, if it wasn't for my super fandom, he'd end up being number 1. So I think he is just that special. Dylan Thieneman, I owe him a study, even though I'm not studying safeties yet. So that's on me, but love the fact that he was so talented as a true freshman, had a little bit of a down year last year, as did everybody on Purdue for the most part. And then you're seeing him transfer to a school that really knows how to utilize and develop safeties. Call me a supporter, and I think this will end up being the top 2, which is very exciting to see. But they at least have someone like Michael Taoff as someone that they'll mention there. I did not see that yet. I have not studied him specifically, but I do think that this was actually a really fun list. Again, I do think it was really cookie cutter. Like, At least they put Keldrick Falk instead of maybe Ruben Bain, but I still think TJ Parker, Keldrick Falk are the common two at the top. Same thing with Woods and Banks. Like there wasn't like even so the Slaughter was a little bit of a stretch. So I like the fact that they were willing to do that, even though I support the stretch. But like Caden Green, again, there's going to be consensus opinions, but I just really do think that all of this is what people kind of think. And I really was hoping for a little bit more specifically unique opinions. And that's okay. It happens, but I hope you guys still enjoyed it regardless. Thank you again for watching and supporting the show as always. See you later. Peace.